I've had the chance to play Questmaster's Realm before its release on Steam, but after playing the game, there isn't really much gameplay yet. It felt more like a pre-alpha build at best, or maybe even a proof of concept just to show the basics of how it could work. Dialogue scrolls out one letter at a time, which is painful and slow to get through. The characters and structures feel like a hodgepodge collection of different items from an asset marketplace. The tutorial is hard to follow, and a lot of mechanics are explained from the perspective of someone who already knows what they're doing. And even after just a few hours of play, it's hard to know what the developer wants to go for long term with this. Once you manage to get past the tutorial and into the core of the game, you find yourself in a desert landscape full of mostly dwarves and scorpions that are either way too easy to kill or far too difficult, which both, by the way, spawn far too quickly. There are levels, but I also don't know if they mean anything, as I'm pretty sure your strength in game is determined by the gear you collect. After my first play of the game, I popped into the Discord to see what all was going on, because I really needed to find out if this game was a joke or not. But what ended up being there was a welcoming and warm community. That's also where I could see the developer reaching out to anybody that asked questions, trying to give information, and that's where it showed that this really was a labor of love. Which, I won't lie, at that point there were some of the quirkier features of the game that they started to fall for a little. I also found out from talking with someone in the Discord that I'd already maxed out most of my gear after 2.5 hours of play, which kinda sucked because all I'd really done was fight the same group of scorpions and these 3 respawning human guys over and over again. And so I got back into the game and tried to explore other places. And really, I was just hoping that I could find some sort of reason to continue playing, but all I found out there was a mostly barren landscape and a bunch of other enemies that were pretty identical to the ones I'd already fought, just far more powerful than anything I could take on alone. Which, I guess at this point I should stress, this is supposed to be an MMO, but there doesn't seem to be any special features for playing it as an MMO. So I started doing some more research and I found out that Questmaster's Realm has only been in development for a little over 6 months. Also to note, I'm pretty sure this is the very first game that this solo dev is making, which if this is the first game, I'm pretty impressed after 6 months to see all this. The only big problem I had at that point came from reading the description of Questmaster's Realm on its Steam page. It felt like it was blatantly lying to us. The world of Questmaster's Realm puts you into a desert with irregular skybox, which is far from the back of a giant turtle called Great Crom traveling through the Aetherverse that it claims this game to be, which, you gotta be honest, that sounds pretty cool. That's an awesome setting for a game, and I wish it did more with that. It also calls the combat fast-paced, but the only thing that's really fast about it is that you can die quickly and enemies die quickly too. It tells us that we can craft and discover new items of increased rarities, but by that it means that each of the 4 classes you choose from only get 1 melee and 1 ranged weapon, and you just keep finding the exact same weapon over and over again, but with different rarities and slightly random stats. All crafting does is break down your extra copies of that weapon into essentially a currency that you can use to make one of your weapons that's exactly the same as the rest that you found, a little bit more powerful. I would not call that crafting. And now the biggest offender, and the one I felt the most disappointed about, was that it tells us that it has deep questing elements. The only quests in this game are go kill 50 enemies. Oh, you completed that? Go kill 100 now. Oh, you finished that? Well then go kill 150 of them. And then it keeps going until it caps out at about 300 or 400, and then it just stops giving you quests altogether. Hey, editor Spen here, it actually caps at 250. It was just so boring I couldn't remember the numbers. It honestly made me pretty mad that someone would call that deep questing. But also keep in mind that at that point, I'd only put in 2.5 hours into this game, and I'd already completed all of its apparent deep questing. At the time of making this video, the game's scheduled to release on Steam in about 8 weeks, which I'm also assuming that's gonna be in early access. But to be blatantly honest, I don't think it's gonna be ready to come out yet. It needs to wait until it can update these 5 things, otherwise coming out into early access is gonna be a waste of time for it. Number 1, it's gotta change the dialogue boxes. Just drop us the text all at once, not the letter by letter scrolling. It made going through the tutorial extremely slow and painful to do. Number 2, we need other quests. At the very least, it needs a pool of quests that it can give out randomly and indefinitely so that there's always something a player can do. It can even just modify the quests that it has right now, making them shorter and more specific. Instead of killing 50 enemies or 300 or 400 or whatever it builds up to, do something like kill 30 scorpions or kill 30 humans of at least this rarity, or go to this marker and kill Dwargish, the Great Dwarf of Dwarvington. But it needs some sort of variety and something that forces the player to go around to other places around the map. Even sprinkling in some fetch quests would be nice. Something like, hello adventurer, I lost my pet rock and I need a new one. Go to the marker I've left and find a new one there for me. It just needs more of it. Number 3, the game claims to be an MMO, but there's nothing that feels MMO about it right now, which I understand it's not officially released yet. But to encourage people to bring their friends or other players in, even during this testing phase with the Discord, have a special set of quests that are a lot more difficult to complete. And as a part of that quest, have a description that recommends the party size be more than X amount of players, or have these quests, take your players to fight more powerful creatures or bosses or even groups of mobs. Or even just throw a sign in the desert that says, only go past this area with more than 3 people. You need something or anything to get people interested in bringing in other players, but doing so in a way that also allows those that want to play solo still be able to. Even at the state that it's in right now, with a Discord of people that are interested in playing the game, there's nothing in the game that motivates me to go there and say, hey, I need other people to help me complete this part. The game just presents everything as if everything can be completed by yourself. So at that point, why would it even need to be an MMO? And number 4, it needs to be easier to discern the difficulty levels of different monsters. I've put a few hours into the game so far, and if you showed me a color of monster, I wouldn't know what it means. It's fine to do colors with weapons, people are used to that, but those weapons also come with different stats on them, so if you didn't know what the color rarity meant, then you could still tell what was better by the stats on it. Monsters, on the other hand, should have a name or a skull or something more obvious to visually discern how powerful they are at the blink of an eye. And number 5, please do more with the idea of the turtle and how the world exists on its back as it travels through the Aetherverse. It's such a cool idea, but other than the brief moment at the beginning of the game that we're introduced to that, we don't really see it or experience it again. Even a change in the skybox would be sweet. Things zooming past and you could look out in the distance and see the top of the head of a turtle slowly wiggle up and down or something like that. That would be awesome. From one of the devs' forum posts on their website, you could see that they have intentions of adding in other areas you can go to later, and they could play this into the idea of the skybox as well, where in some zones when the head of the turtle lifts up, you see it from slightly different angles so that you have a visual sense that you're exploring different areas on the back of the turtle, and that could be really cool. But either way, just please do more with the giant turtle. I would love to see more of that. Oh, and I guess an extra thing here, it'd be really nice if all the mobs were spread out more. Even if it took a little bit more distance to travel between them, that's fine, but you have this huge area with a bunch of different height differences. It'd be really cool if there was more of an incentive to go and explore different places. So I'd say make the mobs respawn a lot slower and force the players to go and fight mobs in other areas of the landscape. I think that would help out a lot more, since I was able to sit in one spot and fight 2 different groups of mobs over and over and over again consistently with almost no downtime between their respawns. If Questmaster's Realm can do at least the first 5 things I mentioned, then I think the game could survive in early access. From what I've read in forum posts and in conversations of the Questmaster's Realm Discord, I really like the world that the developer is trying to create here. It sounds exciting and is a really interesting concept. I just hope that with time the game's able to achieve all of that.